cameras loved Zion Williamson. The world did too. From the moment he leapt through the air at Duke, defying gravity with every dunk, Zion wasn't just a basketball player, he was a spectacle. Drafted first overall, labeled as the next generational superstar, he carried not just the hopes of a franchise, but the weight of a city desperate for greatness. But behind the blinding lights of the court and the flashes of cameras lay a truth few were willing to confront. Inside, Zion was struggling. The transition to the NBA was never going to be easy. For most rookies, it's a test of talent. For Zion, it became a test of character. The injuries came fast, and when they did, so did the questions. Is he too heavy? Is his body built for this league? Is he lazy? The media, once obsessed with his highlights, began dissecting his flaws. Every pound he gained became a headline. Every game he missed fueled rumors. Behind closed doors, Zion began to retreat into himself. He stopped talking to friends. He avoided interviews. Even his social media accounts went silent. His world was shrinking, even as his fame expanded. The organization said all the right things. We believe in Zion. He's part of our long-term plan. But behind the scenes, doubt was spreading. Team meetings grew tense. Coaches whispered about conditioning. Executives debated his trade value. Zion heard it all, even if no one said it to his face. At home, the silence was louder than any arena roar. Nights were filled with self-doubt. He would sit on the edge of his bed, staring at his swollen knee, wondering if his body was betraying his dreams. The same body that had made him a legend in high school, a phenomenon at Duke, now felt like a prison. He missed being happy. He missed playing freely. But more than anything, he missed being believed in. It was during one of these quiet nights that he called his old high school coach. The call lasted 3 hours. Zion, you are more than a number, more than a jersey, more than a contract. You're a fighter. But you have to decide right now, do you want to prove them right or prove yourself right? The question echoed in his head for days, until one morning he showed up to the facility at 5 a.m. No cameras, no media, just Zion, ready to begin again. There was no music in the gym, just the sound of sneakers squeaking on hardwood and the dull thump of a ball bouncing off the floor. The arena lights stayed off, leaving only the dim glow of early morning seeping through the windows. This was no promotional shoot, no press, no entourage, just Zion drenched in sweat, pushing through the pain. The team staff didn't even know he was coming. He didn't tell them. He didn't want a program. He didn't want a rehab schedule designed by someone else. He wanted to start on his own terms. Every morning at 5 a.m. he returned, first alone, then joined by an old trainer from South Carolina, someone who knew Zion before the fame, before the pressure. Together they worked in silence. Footwork, core strength, flexibility, hours spent perfecting movements others took for granted. Pain was constant, but so was progress. The weight began to drop. The burst started to return. But the biggest change wasn't in his body. It was in his mind. Zion stopped counting how many times people doubted him. Instead, he began counting reps. Not for validation, but for himself. Each drop of sweat was a silent promise. I'm coming back. The front office noticed, quietly at first. The team's performance staff started sending trainers to check in. Zion accepted the help, but only if they followed his pace. He didn't want shortcuts. He didn't want applause. He wanted results. Teammates began showing up earlier, trying to match his rhythm. The gym slowly grew louder. It wasn't Zion's voice that led them. It was his example. But outside the facility, rumors still lingered. Fans had moved on. Analysts discussed potential trades. Maybe he'll never be what we thought. Zion heard it all, and still, he said nothing. He let his work speak. By month 3, he was moving like he hadn't in years. Explosive, light, free. The day finally came when the team held a closed scrimmage. Coaches, execs, and a few players gathered. Zion stepped on the court. The lights were still dim, the cameras still absent. But when he took that first drive to the hoop, slicing through defenders, soaring, spinning, every breath in the gym paused. He wasn't back. He was better. Not because of a headline, but because this time Zion had built himself back piece by piece. Not for the world, for himself. When the official announcement came that Zion would return to the lineup, it was delivered with cautious optimism. No fanfare, no promises, just a line in a press release. Zion Williamson will be available for tonight's game. But inside the locker room, energy shifted. The team wasn't just getting a player back. They were getting their heartbeat back. Zion entered the arena that night with his hoodie up, headphones on, and focus etched into every line of his face. Cameras followed his every move, but he ignored them. His warm-up was businesslike. No flashy dunks, no smiles, just sweat, footwork, focus. The tip-off came, and Zion was on the bench. Coach wanted to ease him in. But when he stood at the scorer's table, ready to check in, the crowd erupted. Not just for the return of a star, but for the return of hope. His first possession wasn't a dunk. It wasn't even a shot. It was a pass. A smart, crisp dish off a double team that led to an open three. The bench rose. That was the moment everyone realized. Zion wasn't chasing highlights anymore. He was playing to win. Then came the drive. Third quarter, fast break, one defender back. Zion pushed the ball, Euro-stepped around contact, finished with finesse. And just like that, the building shook again. Commentators called it a comeback. Zion knew better. This wasn't a comeback. It was a new beginning. The buzz wasn't immediate, but it built quickly. In the days following Zion's quiet but impactful return, the narrative began to shift. Headlines once filled with doubt and criticism softened. Sports analysts who had counted him out now used words like mature, focused, and evolved. Social media lit up, not with highlight reels, but with slowed-down clips of Zion boxing out, directing traffic on defense, making the extra pass. The nuance of his game was finally getting noticed. For the first time in years, Zion wasn't being compared to what people hoped he'd become. He was being appreciated for what he was becoming. Behind the scenes, his teammates saw it first. They didn't just see a stronger, more agile Zion. They saw a leader, one who showed up early, stayed late, and demanded nothing he wasn't willing to give himself. He spoke more during film sessions, not loudly, but precisely. He wasn't afraid to call out missed rotations, but he also praised ball movement, defensive hustle, and bench energy. He celebrated others' successes more than his own. The Pelicans, a team once seen as a collection of promising pieces, began to feel like a unit. Games became battles, close ones, hard-fought ones. But they were winning, not always because of Zion, but never without him. His presence changed the geometry of the court. Defenses collapsed, shooters found rhythm, opponents hesitated. And Zion? He picked his spots like a veteran, no longer hunting for the spotlight, but letting the game come to him. In the locker room, the vibe shifted. Music felt louder, laughter came easier. Players started arriving early again, not just to train, but to compete. Because when Zion was locked in, everyone had to raise their level. One night, after a gritty win against a top-seeded team, the locker room was electric. Zion had 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Nothing flashy on paper, but it was the way he played. One chase-down block that saved a lead, 2 extra pass assists in crunch time, and a physical presence that wore down the other team's frontcourt. Reporters crowded the room post-game, but Zion gave short answers, polite but measured. Then, a rookie, still in his warm-up gear, was asked what it was like playing alongside Zion. He smiled, then said, "It's like playing with gravity." The quote went viral. So did the next few games. Zion's minutes increased gradually. His stats climbed. But more importantly, the team was climbing in the standings. Quietly, confidently, they were becoming the kind of squad no one wanted to face come playoff time. National networks took notice. Podcasts began crafting redemption arcs. Former critics issued mea culpas. "I was wrong about Zion" became a common segment title. Yet Zion didn't gloat. In pressers, he deflected credit to teammates. During interviews, he repeated the same mantra. Still work to do. Behind closed doors, though, he began to let his guard down. He called his high school coach again. Not for advice this time, just to say thank you. He started replying to old friends, slowly rekindling connections he had withdrawn from. And for the first time in a long time, he laughed. Really laughed, without second-guessing what the world would think. But he never forgot the silence. He carried it like armor, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Because Zion knew the same voices cheering him now could turn again. But it didn't matter. He wasn't playing for them. He was playing for the kid who once believed anything was possible. And now, that kid was back. Older, wiser, stronger, ready for what came next. Every rise has its test, and Zion's was about to come. The Pelicans were surging, wins piling up, chemistry peaking, Zion anchoring both ends of the floor with quiet authority. Pundits started whispering, MVP buzz. The All-Star break was around the corner, and Zion's name was everywhere again. But this time, he wasn't just a highlight. He was a headline. Then the storm hit. It started with a single photo. Grainy, out of context. Zion sitting courtside at a charity event in New Orleans. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but the internet didn't care. The angle was unflattering, and suddenly, the whispers returned. Did he gain weight again? Is he slipping? Same old Zion. Sports media, ever hungry for drama, ran with it. TV panels debated his commitment. Articles dissected the image like a crime scene. The same voices that had praised his maturity now cast doubt. But this time, Zion didn't flinch. He didn't delete his social media. He didn't skip practices. He didn't even comment. He just played. The very next game, Zion dropped 34 points on 75% shooting against a playoff contending team. He grabbed 12 rebounds, dished out 6 assists, and blocked 3 shots. It was one of his most complete games all season. Reporters flooded him post-game, eager for a soundbite, some clapback, some fire. He gave them none. "Just doing my job," he said before walking off. Inside the locker room, his teammates rallied. "We got you," one of them said, slapping his back. The younger players, especially, had started to look to Zion not just for plays, but for poise. A few nights later, the Pelicans were scheduled for a nationally televised showdown against a top Eastern Conference team. The stage was set. Cameras zoomed in during warm-ups. Zion, as focused as ever, moved with the quiet intensity of someone who knew exactly what was at stake, but wasn't playing for the cameras. The game was a war. Physical, fast, emotional. Zion didn't dominate on the stat sheet, but his fingerprints were everywhere. He boxed out on every possession. He rotated on defense like clockwork. He screamed encouragement from the bench. He checked in late in the fourth with the game tied and under 3 minutes left. Then came the sequence. Rebound, outlet pass. Zion sprinted the floor, not for a dunk, but to seal the paint and draw defenders. His presence opened a corner 3. Next possession, defensive switch. Zion held his ground against a bigger forward, forced a tough shot, grabbed the rebound. Final minute, tie game. Zion caught the ball on the elbow. He faked a drive, drew 2 defenders, and kicked it out. Assistant game-winning 3, buzzer, victory. He walked off the court without a fist pump, without a roar, just a nod. The post-game show was all Zion. Underrated brilliance. Leadership you can't teach. Not just back, better. Social media tried again to stir drama. The photo resurfaced. A new wave of talking heads argued over whether he was truly elite. Zion didn't reply. But something was brewing behind the scenes. The NBA announced its all-star selections. Zion was in, not because of votes, because of respect. Coaches league-wide had picked him as a reserve. The league had taken notice of the transformation, not just physically, not just in numbers, but in purpose. At All-Star Weekend, Zion arrived low-key. No flashy outfits, no entourage, just his family, a couple teammates, and his high school coach, whom he'd invited as his personal guest. During media availability, someone finally asked what had changed. Zion paused, then said, "I stopped trying to prove everyone wrong. I started trying to prove myself right." It was the quote of the weekend. It was clipped, shared, praised. But for Zion, it wasn't a soundbite. It was a mission, one rooted in silence, one forged in solitude, and now echoed on the biggest stages in basketball. He wasn't chasing redemption anymore. He was the redemption. By the final stretch of the season, something had shifted, not just in Zion, but around him. The Pelicans were no longer underdogs. They were contenders, gritty, focused, united. And at the heart of that transformation was Zion Williamson, not just as a player, but as a presence. In the locker room, his voice now carried weight, not because he demanded it, but because he had earned it. The quiet kid who once sat in silence with headphones on was now leading film breakdowns, mentoring rookies, and challenging veterans. His questions were sharp, his feedback was sharper. Every gesture, every glance had intent. But it wasn't just the team who had changed. The city noticed too. New Orleans, always passionate, had been cautious with Zion. They'd been hurt before. Too many next big things had come and gone. But now, murals started going up. Zion, not soaring through the air, but standing strong, grounded. Headlines no longer speculated trades. They speculated titles. And yet, Zion stayed grounded. One day after practice, a local reporter asked him what the moment felt like. Zion smiled slightly, then said, "It feels like I finally belong. Not because I'm perfect, but because I didn't quit." The response went viral. That week, The Pelicans faced the defending champions in a nationally televised game. The stakes were high: playoff seeding, statement win, respect. From the opening tip, Zion was relentless. Not flashy, ferocious. He posted up with precision, moved without the ball, fought through screens, challenged every shot. Every possession felt personal. Every minute felt earned. By the fourth quarter, the crowd chanted his name, not out of nostalgia, out of awe. With 2 minutes left, down by 1, Zion drove baseline. 2 defenders collapsed. He twisted midair and found the shooter on the wing. Splash. Pelicans up 2. Next possession, Zion again. This time he didn't pass. He powered through contact, took the hit, and finished. And won. He roared, not for the cameras, but for the years of silence he had carried. When the buzzer sounded, he didn't celebrate wildly. He hugged his coach. He dapped his teammates. Then, quietly, he looked into the crowd, where his mother stood, tears in her eyes. That night, the press conference room was packed. Zion sat at the podium, still in uniform, towel over his shoulders. A journalist asked, "What does this win mean to you personally?" Zion leaned forward, thoughtful. "It means I kept my promise. To the kid who was scared his dream was slipping away. To the people who believed in me when it was quiet. To my body, for not giving up on me. And to everyone who thought I was done. I'm just getting started." The room fell silent. Then applause. Not out of politeness, out of respect. Off the court, Zion began showing up more. Community events, school visits, charity programs. But there were no press releases, no cameras, just Zion, doing what felt right. One day, at a youth camp, a teenager pulled him aside and said, "I almost quit basketball last year. But then, I watched your comeback." Zion paused, then hugged the kid and whispered, "I almost quit too. I'm glad we didn't." Those words stayed with the boy, and with Zion, because that was the legacy. Not just the numbers, not just the dunks, but the comeback, the silence, the choice to begin again. That summer, Zion walked into a production studio for a documentary interview. The producers had gathered footage, his rookie year, the injuries, the criticism, the grind, the return. At one point, they asked, "What do you want this story to say?" He didn't hesitate. "I want it to say that healing is hard, but it's possible, and that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up with purpose." Fade to black. Legacy sealed, not with noise, but with quiet strength, with Zion.